call this special meeting to order. So I want to thank everyone who came out this morning. John, if you could call the roll, please.
Peter. Atkins.
Here.
Connett.
Here.
Crawford.
Here.
Darcy.
Here.
Goddard. Graff. Hall.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Howard.
Here.
Hemick.
Here.
Josting.
Here.
Longfellow.
Here.
Mennel.
Here.
Mingus. Frail.
Here.
Rich Simpson.
Here.
Schneider.
Here.
Squartino.
Here.
Sin.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Chairman Zimmerman.
We have a quorum, will do business if we could rise for the invocation and pledge.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful morning that you gave us, that we can enjoy the sunshine that you've given us, that we can enjoy the privileges of living in a free country like this, and gather together. Give us wisdom and discernment this morning as we just talk through these issues. I pray that even though we may disagree in some areas, that we can come away with a consensus and a sense of unity on what's best for Tazewell County. Thank you for our citizens and our employees and what you did for us on the cross. We pray all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, not to start out on a bad note, but I did have to tell Mike to take his tie off this morning. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming at 8:30 on Saturday morning. We won't make a habit of this. First of all, I want to just say thank you to Nick Graff, who couldn't be here today, and the ARCA committee and the work that they've done thus far. They're not finished. And then probably more so Greg Longfellow and the work that he's done in property committee, because these aren't easy tasks, and trying to get everybody's input and not quell rumors, but there's people talk about that, and we're so early in this process, and that's kind of the purpose of today's meeting. Is we want to hear from all the board members, we want to hear from our employees, and just take that input and be able to move forward with kind of a sense of purpose on where we're headed here. The restroom key is in the back. If you're like me and have had plenty of coffee this morning, I may need that. And there are coffee and rolls back there as you see fit. All right, and this is just for just in general, but we'll get to the building specific things. Are there any communications from members of the public or county employees not related to today's purpose? Okay. Any communications from elected and appointed county officials? Okay, seeing none, now we're going to get down to the discussion of kind of our downtown campus and kind of some of our needs moving into the future. Let me just start with the ARPA priorities that came out of the committee were employee bonuses, which we've already done. Health department was one of the priorities, as was potentially a new justice center, and then making up for lost revenue. So those are the four that came out of there. Depending on where we're at the end of the day, broadband reserves some of the money, I believe, for our rural folks, and then if there's money left over, some grants. I think where I'd like to start today is with Mike Shoney. And if Mike, you want to just come up here and just kind of give us a state of the downtown campus, some of our deficiencies, some of our needs here. Everybody knows Mike, but thank you, Mike.
Good morning. I was just going to speak about some of the buildings we're talking about eliminating, mostly. All our buildings need work. I don't think there's a building we have that we don't have to do some work on a daily basis. But I want to start with the Tazewell building because it's probably one of the worst buildings we have downtown. Structurally, we have brick and block all along the building. If you go into the building, we actually have paneling pushed off there on the inside of the building where we have brick that's actually deteriorated so badly that it's actually pushing paneling off the wall. You go to the basement and we have, chimneys that are collapsing, just a matter of time before we see this completely collapse and have to rebuild. Windows that need to be replaced, roofing, although right now it's okay, we constantly have to repair these things. HVAC systems need to be updated. We can continue to do work on this thing. We could put a lot of money in this thing and make this building work, but honestly, I think we're putting money where it doesn't need to be.
And Mike, I mean, if people have questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand, Greg.
As we go through the buildings, say who's in the building, so, because it doesn't sound good that we keep it, but if we do something, we need to address whoever's there, so I guess.
Sure, and in the Tazewell building, you have a public defender's office up there. They take up the second floor upstairs. We had GSI up there for a little bit, and they kind of disbanded and they're moving over to the McKinsey building. So we can use this building somewhat for in the interim if we decide to go through the process of building to put some parties over there. Downstairs, the whole downstairs is ROE, which is, and that particular room that I said where we actually have the paneling coming off the walls because the brick is pushing it off. That's one of their areas down there. We've done some work in the building. It doesn't have it's got a fire alarm system. It doesn't have a sprinkler system. So we need to keep in mind that this building is pretty much a wood structure that's got block and brick around it. So if we were to have any fires in that building, they probably would go up pretty quick. Good. Thank you.
Is that attached to the next building?
Yes, it is.
Share a wall?
It does share a wall, and we have had some problems with that wall because there's movement within that wall, between the walls, and it creates roof leaks for us. So on that particular side of the building, we have more roof leaks over there, which goes all the way down to ROE. So we've had to make a lot of repairs down in ROE for sealing and what have you. It does that.
Yeah, do we have pictures of some of this damage that you're explaining, some of the deterioration? Have you had any estimates on getting any construction people in there, give you what it's gonna take to maybe get it up to code and get it to where it's usable?
No.
Yep. Could you state your name for the record?
My name's Terry Fisher, I'm a bailiff over at the courthouse.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jerry.
No, we haven't. We haven't gone down that road yet simply because we're looking at other avenues and basically get away from that building because you'll probably have more cost into the renovation that needs to be done on that. You're going to replace some brick than probably what the value of the building actually is. If they decide they want to maintain this building, then we would go down that avenue. Russ.
Morning, Mike.
Well,
I'm the only guy that's on the county board that was on the county board when we voted to purchase the Tazewell building. It was a mistake then, and it's just grown as a mistake in the intervening years. I could go on for an hour and I won't. I'll just say this, I will not be voting for the acquisition of any old used building. If we decide that we need, as Tazewell County, not want, need to have additional space for our operations, any of our operations, I will be only supporting the acquiring of property and building new. Thank you.
Eric?
How many people we got in that work in that building that rely on that building?
Do you know what we have for public defenders over there right now? In my head, I'm thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 for public defender's office. That would be about right, so. And then downstairs ROE, 2, 4, 6, I think 7 people for ROE. Is what we got in there right now. We have a lot of old files downstairs that are sitting in the basement. We have files ruined due to plumbing leaks that just come up. I mean, and if you're not down that basement on a daily basis, you don't know what you're gonna run into sometimes. We come in there and we found the leaks because we're down there for other purposes. So we just had to kind of fight this battle as we've gone along. I'm in agreement with Russ, from a maintenance standpoint. old buildings are a lot of work and they're very costly to maintain.
If we leave this building, what's our responsibility to the deserted building?
We'd have to maintain to some extent because it's gonna deteriorate. Anytime you leave a building abandoned, they start to deteriorate. So what's our, that would be up to the city. They would probably enforce us to either take it down or maintain it. So, and that metal structure that's around that building, that's actually created some structural issues on that building.
All right, I'm gonna move on to
Let's go to the arcade. I know, the arcade's had a lot of work done to it, but it actually needs all new upper windows replaced. I know, before I got here, you had to dig up the street, replace this, south wall. We're already seeing some deterioration of that wall, or already we see water coming in that. You go to the north side of the building, and it's probably doing the same thing that the, south side was doing initially. The brick is deteriorated. All the basement brick is deteriorating to the point where it's starting to break loose. Plumbing, we fight plumbing that building on a regular basis. Like I said, the windows, all the upper windows need to be replaced in that. They leak, or they're not very efficient. If you look around, walk around the outside of the building, you'll see the mortar on the brick starting to deteriorate and come away from the building. So it'd have to be recut.
Is that building not a historic designation?
I don't believe so. We can check into that, but I don't believe that one is.
Do we have anybody in the arcade building?
I'm sorry?
Do we have anybody in the arcade building?
Absolutely. We have, Gateway's in there. I don't know how many people, that's their truck treatment program over there. They have people in there every day. They, maintain two of the offices. One they've already renovated, which is, it's nice, but they have their issues. And again, you got an outside wall on the north wall, which we have some issues on that every once in a while. They've taken on, another office, more interior, that they were planning on doing, renovation to that, which kind of got this whole thing started. Because we need to let our tenants know what our potential plan is here, because they were planning on starting to renovate that side as well. Upstairs, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 offices up there that are being utilized by either attorneys, architects, I think, was it child advocacy is up in there as well? Which one of the two? Where you at? I'm sorry, Lori? Who is it you got over there, upstairs?
We have a GAO, the county employee.
Okay.
The guardian ad litem.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's another person we have to find a home for as well.
So we only got one county employee there?
No, we also have the VA in there, which they do a lot of work down through there as well. They constantly have traffic in and out of there. They provide a lot of services to the local community. You have the tattoo parlor, which of course we're dealing with. They did a lot of work going into that. Although we just got done doing a lot of renovation after the office was abandoned, I won't say abandoned, but non-occupied. So, but they went in and did a lot of work. They were asking for money for the work they've done. That was their choice of what I looked at.
So would we be considered a landlord to that building? The majority of the people in there are renting, am I correct on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jackie, do you know the actual numbers over there?
As far as the number of tenants,
Yes.
I think there's 8, so 2 and then 6 that are just renting.
It is an income generator for the county.
So yeah, the building does need a lot of work. I mean, we could put in there, the HVAC units on the roof are at the point they need to be replaced. They're at that age that, just like what we just did in this building here, still continue to do in this building, you have the same situation over there.
So you're saying it's an income generator, but is it a profit generator?
Just beware of people that give you free buildings. Because, we spent $500,000 to shore up that one wall right out of the chute, so.
Is this slated for demolition or?
Yes, that would be our intent, depending on where we go here, yes.
Is there lease arrangements that we have to take care of before we can?
And that's part of the purpose of this meeting too, because we want to communicate with the people in there, what the plans are in the future. They've all been notified that something's up. so.
And that, a letter has gone out, Jackie did put a letter out to all the tenants over there, so they do know our intent. We kind of put a timeline on it, hopefully the first of the year, if this, we go ahead with this. But right now, you are getting income out of the building, but probably not what it costs to take care of that building. I'm gonna move to the old post office, unless anybody's got any questions about that building. The old post office, we have this, state's attorney's office on the upper floor there. I wanna say there's 2, 4, 8 people over there? Maybe 9? Eight, okay. I did changes on it, so I can't, it's hard for me to keep track of it. Upper floor is all state's attorney. There's a stairwell going up here that just they use, an elevator, which we have troubles with every once in a while, and it actually has to be updated. The rest of the building is probation. The basement and the first floor is all probation. I really don't know the numbers because it changes consistently, but they're pretty full in there on a consistent basis. It's changed somewhat with COVID because you have people that don't come in every day. I wish.
Like, do you know how many people are, how many probation officers? Between 30 and 40 in that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Last count was 33.
33,
Last
okay.
count, yeah.
I know it was renovated, they did some updates on the building, obviously, but it's a really tight space. It barely meets some of the current code issues that we need to be addressing over there, but just the building in general, the bathrooms in that are not conducive to the traffic that goes through there. They have testing that they have to do in there, which they don't really have a lab, they're using a bathroom in there, actually, urinals right behind the testing. It's just not a good situation. Again, we have some mortar issues over there, we have windows issues. We just did the roof, which has saved us some here with some of the damages and took care of some of the problems, but we had water running in that building on a regular basis. So putting the roof on it, like we did, entailed tearing the old roof off and having to reblock a lot of the walls underneath the roof because it was so deteriorated. We still have that on some of the brick that's on that building. It needs to be re-tuck pointed. All the windows have to be replaced in that. It's an old building and it just takes a lot of maintenance to maintain that thing. Our HVAC units on that building are not bad. They're fairly decent, but there's a lot of them. I think we have 9 total on that. And we do have issues on a pretty consistent basis where we just have fan motors going out. The septic system is not really well downtown. We actually have a septic and water system, a stormwater system, and when we get flooded streets in here, that basement I think floods. We're in here in the middle of the night sometimes just cleaning up. So it's just a tough situation over there. Again, another building we could put money into, okay? It is on the historical register, but again, we've taken no money for renovation of that. And even the grant money you do get for renovation of these old buildings is minimal, but once you take it, you kind of tie yourself to that. So that's what we try to do.
So my question in regards to that is, what is, the restrictions and, as far as not using the building, trying to, ditch the building, so to speak, what issues is tied to that, being that designation?
There isn't any, because we haven't taken any state grant money for it. It's our building to do what we want. It's registered as a historic, but there's nothing saying that building cannot come down.
And we're not necessarily advocating for taking the post office down, but we would like to not have ownership of it anymore. So whether that's a museum, whether there's some other organization that would like to take over that building, again, with the consensus of the board, if that's part of our plan. Move on to the courthouse.
Courthouse. Although we're all in there every day, the courthouse has many issues as well. We're working on the electrical side of this thing. We put a great deal of money into time and money into doing the electrical we've done so far. But, we also need to understand that when that was originally wired, it wasn't wired to current codes. The grounding system on that, although we meet what we have to do, it's not properly grounded, okay? It would require us to run all new wire in there to bring all the outlets and, electrical systems to current code. So that was part of the plan with this electric project is as a step-in process. We got all the head-end work done on this thing. Now we're gonna go to the next phase of this thing, lighting, outlets, and what have you. But even with that being said, we get a lot of complaints about fresh air in that building. It's a fan cool system, which you really don't get fresh air in that building. I think that's our biggest concern with that is, especially with COVID, was getting some fresh air in the building. We don't have that. Windows, they all need to be replaced, and I think at one time that they had a cost for that, and it was close to $1 million, I think it was the cost to get the windows redone, that thing. Again, it's an old building. Your staircases are in need of being completely redone. We put levels on those staircases, and you can actually see where people have walked over the years, and the steps have actually started to bottom out and round out. They actually fall forward. We've actually had some people coming down the steps and just slip down the steps, and a lot of it has to do with how those stairs are. They really need to be redone. We could put covers over them, but my understanding that was done at one time and then they were removed. It's just a temporary fix, and when you have something like that, it's not going to hold very long. It just becomes a maintenance nightmare is what it becomes.
Down in the basement, there, and along those walls, now, I'm not technically savvy on your terms for construction, but there are like wind tunnels, there's areas along the foundation, like on the north side of the building, and I'm talking way down deep, and on the back side, where they used to have ventilation through there, and they would have fans running, big fans that would blow out and pull from the courthouse. Is any of that functionable anymore, or did they shut that down, or?
There's never been any fans for as long as I've been here downstairs.
Okay, now there used to be, I've been on that roof, I've been in that basement, running around that place, years ago. I know it's hard to believe. But, yeah. But, no, that for the ventilation and that to keep, air moving through that building, and, I guess obviously for back in the day when it was built for, chimneys, for cooling, for, air flow, and keeping, moisture down from the building itself. So, nobody runs any of that, that's what I'm saying, just these last, they don't do any of that anymore.
No, and a lot of those, air vents have been utilized for running, data lines, some cable and what have you over the years, so they're not functional.
Still have a generator in the basement?
That's,
No. Well, the generator's down there, it's not functional.
yeah, now there was one, they had just put one, that was back then. They probably removed it on the, northwest side, and it was behind some bushes and things where there was a air.
Oh, air vent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, it's still there, but it's what they used for bringing the, exhaust out for the generator that's actually still in the basement. I've tried to get people to come and take this generator out. People won't touch it.
No, I understand.
We're talking about complete disassembling this thing, take apart.
Right,
So,
okay.
the generator may be there for a number of years. So, unless I can find somebody volunteer to come in. They're just, to renovate that building, if we went down that road, what do you do with all the courtrooms? What do you do with all the offices? Because they're used on a daily basis, so, but can it be renovated? Yeah. It'll be costly to put it back to its original condition. Anytime you get an old building, the old marble, I know Stu loves to maintain the marble over there. I try to convince him to put carpet in his area, and he wants to stay right where he's at.
You wanted the carpet, the marble?
Because the marble floor looks terrible. Oh, yeah, that's it. So, but I've actually started to hold back on some of the projects we had planned for that building, other than electrical right now. We're dealing with electrical and data lines over there. audio-visual system we're dealing with right now. But I've kind of backed off on some of the other projects. I was planning on even the carpet, the windows, until we decide what we're doing with this building. I don't want to put a bunch of money into it and then come back and have to renovate and change everything again. So I'll be honest, I've kind of backed off on that. I'm sorry, Nathan.
There was a grant earlier this year, or the end of last year, to do some things in the courthouse to upgrade the technology. I think it was one of our employees wrote a grant for it, and we received that money. Have we used it, and where did it go, and did we pour that into that building, or was it something that we used?
If we're talking about the one that I think we're talking about, it came from the court system.
Right.
And it was to update the courtroom so that they had Zoom capabilities and all that kind of stuff. That's.
But that was technology.
Yes,
really,
correct.
Yeah, and we are doing that. We are moving forward with that. We got some electrical and data work we gotta do with that. We just did a walkthrough a little over a week ago to determine what's going where and what we have to put in place.
So those are the primary buildings downtown that are involved in this discussion. Yeah.
We still got the McKinsey building, which has issues. If you walk around the outside of the McKinsey building, you'll see that the stone is actually deteriorating. And a lot of that, I think, is a tribute to the windows that we have in that building, leaking down the walls. You've got moisture behind that, and it's wicking down all the way to the bottom, which is causing a lot of deterioration. A lot of your control joints have already deteriorated, and we're seeing that deteriorating point. It's got to be replaced. I'm working with Farnsworth right now to put a packet together for a statement of work for the windows. I try to do that myself. It's a lot more detailed than what I want to deal with when I start getting into this thing. So we're just gonna we've asked Farnsworth to give us some costs to put the packet together to put this thing up for bid. It's not gonna be inexpensive, but those windows have been there for a number of years. They're very old. I think they're older than the ones that are in the courthouse.
Do you have a guesstimate to what all this is gonna cost?
No.
And how much money do we have to play with? That's the thing.
Well, I mean, I think right now we probably have somewhere around 23 million that's available, so.
Sorry.
Link.
3 years ago, they did a 5-year capital plan and got a revolving line of credit from the bank and identified $5 million worth of improvements that needed to be done. I would think that would be a good starting place.
Right. And some of that is in our reserves, isn't it, Mike? Okay.
And that kind of what we're using for the windows, the HVAC systems we put on the roofs here, a lot of these upgrades that we've done, in the building.
A lot of this stuff's already been identified.
Yes. So, Terry?
Yeah, so what does this $23 million represent? Where does it come from? Is it part of the budget?
That's our ARPA funds that we received from the federal government,
So
yeah.
that's the federal fund.
Yeah.
What's the stipulation on that?
They have some controls on it, but it's fairly loose. The federal government, I think, just wants to see the money spent.
Time frame wise? Is there?
So we have to have the money, Greg, committed by 24 and everything completed by?
Committed by the May of 24 and the project's spent in total completion by 26.
By 26, so. Bill?
Excuse me, as I understand it, there are some additional restrictions on that money, right? We can spend it for a new health department building, for instance, but we can't spend it for all the things that we've discussed need to be taken care of. If it were ventilation or something clearly geared towards helping with another pandemic, we could spend it on that, but the ARPA money, we can't just say, we've got all these things we need to fix in our downtown campus, let's spend the money on that. I think that would be forbidden under the statute.
So, again, there's a lot of discretion here, gray area, but what it is we got $26 million from the feds. The second tranche of money is on its way. We spent $2 million on employee bonuses. These are just approximate, and then we have some, I think we had promised some lost revenue for links. There's just some different areas, so I'm just gonna say, of that $26 million, $10 million the feds designated as unrestricted, so we can spend it as we choose. So that remaining $13 million that we have left have to fit somewhere within that criteria. Did you wanna say something, Brett?
I do quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Bill, kind of like you're talking, there are things that you can't spend it on, but if you spend money, like spend on items, whether it's EMA or some of the different things, let's say you don't fund that for a year with the general fund, but you fund it with that money, that's qualified under it, and then you can take the money that you would have spent on it, earmark it, and put it outside of it, so that then you can have that money unrestricted for other uses for a later time. So there's ways that you can kind of play with how it's spent and what you're spending it on to do. Some of the money that we're spending on the windows and the electrical upgrades, all that as it comes out of general, you don't have to spend on that. You could spend some of the ARPA money on that and then take the money again that you did spend on it, put it aside so that you wouldn't be able to spend it later on what you want.
And if we do something with the health department, I mean, that would fit under that $13 million. If you do things like windows or HVAC systems that increase ventilation, that would be, if your purpose is to spread people out, you know, get them so they can socially distance, that would fit. So I mean, it's a pretty loose definition. In anything above, I think, a certain threshold of, I don't know if it's $1 million, we would need to get approval from the feds first. So it's not like we're gonna spend 13 million and then the feds are gonna say, too bad. And so, I mean, we're gonna proceed cautiously, but we're gonna do it with some guidance. But thanks for bringing that up. Monica?
Are you going to test on the health department or EMA or any of that, those buildings? Today?
No, I'm gonna have Amy come up and talk about the health department. So,
Okay.
yeah.
You know, that, on my end is the EMA building. It's an old building, it's got its issues, it's usable, but it definitely has its issues. But structure, I think, is sound there. We just need windows and what have you put in as well.
The EMA
Yes, it's just that building.
and the current health department that's cracked all the way around the building, the outside.
I'm not aware of it being cracked all the way around.
I'll say that, thank you.
Okay.
All right, any more questions for Mike? Mike, thank you to you and your staff for everything you do. I mean, they're stretched really thin, and they do an excellent job with the resources that they have. So, Amy, do you want to come up and talk about the health department right now? She makes her way.
time where we could all come and have a discussion, appreciate that. Condition of the current health department, 32 years ago, a little over is how old that building is now, about 32 years old. So while it's a new building, it's now 32 years old. The way that it was constructed doesn't really allow ease in building onto that building. There is no ability like to go up, you'd have to go out, and to the cracking, like the foundation is cracked through the entire building. There's a crack through the entire building that really has been there as long as I can remember, honestly. The things I wanted to kind of talk about today is that the impacts of COVID, while things are starting to get back to regular work, are going to be with us for a while. In particular, in the areas that have been identified in our community health assessment around mental health and nutrition. I think also the loss that we had of the dental center during COVID, there were decisions that I still stand by that needed to be made at the time. We could not keep the dental center going without a clear picture of how long we could, how long again it would be before we could operate, because the cost of that staff is very large. And so we were up against a contract of either keeping the dentist on or at that time letting it go. So we did let the dental division division go, during COVID in May of 2020. We still use the space in North Pekin that the dental center was in for the remainder of the lease for our contact tracers. So we were able to have staffing space that we would not have had at Tremont to bring on the contact tracing staff during that time. We do have the two buildings in Tremont, the main building and then the environmental health building, but there is no ability to bring additional staff on. So if we were to bring the dental center or, you know, some of those things, there's no ability physically in that building to take those services in. I provided a packet, thanks to Carla for helping to get that together, and Bobby Mullins, our board president, while I was on vacation. This is a document that has been reworked a couple different times, had been shared with the ARPA committee, had been shared with Health Services Committee and our Board of Health, that kind of did another look at it to provide to you. So I think this is something like the third or fourth revision of that information, updated with our community health assessment that was just decided last Thursday, and provided some kind of numbers of people that we serve. I do want to say that, you know, 32 years ago, I started when they had built the new building, but my first day was packing up the old health department, which is now EMA. And that building, as I walked around on my very first day, I was shocked that there were rain gutters like you would see on a house that was going underneath pipes on that second floor to keep the water off of people. And to my knowledge, there's been some upgrades in that building, but I do want to say that, you know, I think there's a thread through all of our discussion today, and that is that upkeep. And that is one of the concerns, that whatever we do, we have that ability to continue to upkeep whatever structures we have. But as we moved into that new building, it was small to begin with. You know, it started off small. We kind of, I think the Board of Health, and I wasn't around for those decisions, and I don't have Gordon anymore to ask, but I feel like they put together a building that they could manage at the time, and that the services needed at the time, that the growth potential was never built into that facility. I think I'll stop there. If there's any questions specific about the health department services, I'm not sure.
Yeah, just chime in. That was a helpful map you put in here, by the way, where your clients live primarily.
If you go to the service request to meet, I think it pretty well was explained in the document. We call ourselves the geographic center of the county, and so therefore we are equally accessible to everyone in the county, but that also makes us inaccessible at times as well. And given the transportation issues and the kind of going away from the taxi companies, we used to have good contracts with the taxi companies, but now the Uber folks are less reliable for clients. There's times where we get people stranded at the health department, and we're sitting with them out on the front bench waiting for someone to come and get them in the evening. That's just the location challenges.
Questions? Garrett, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, I've been deal with that for a long time, and then even the Gordon back then, we were always looking for another external place to go to. I think we were looking over, I forget the name of the subdivision, but we were always looking for buildings. We kind of went toward, I kind of geared them towards the cheap route of using the old highway building just because it was there and available at the right price and stuff like that. But it serves a purpose, but I'm not sure it's a keeper type of thing that, wow, it was something that, it was the cheaper option. And again, Gordon saved money to try to do an addition onto there, but eventually with budgets and stuff, that money kind of just went back into keeping the place going, as opposed to having money saved for an addition or for something else. So we, as Amy says, it was from the get-go looking at it for some extra space.
I want to remind everybody that the dental center has never been located in Tremont. The dental center was located down here across from the Tazewell building for many, many years, and then it was shut down for about a year and a half, and then we started the North Pekin Center. So we've never had the dental division in Tremont.
Okay, I have a couple questions. First, just want to ask you, I think there's some debate about it. Do you think the health department needs a new building?
We need different space. So I don't know that I'm necessarily saying we have to have a brand new building. We need to have different space. If we're gonna reach the people that we need to reach and complete the mission as we put ourselves out to do in our strategic plan, in our community health improvement plan, and all those kind of things, we need to make sure that we're trying to do that. We've had agreements with WIC at Head Starts in East Peoria and in Pekin to try and conduct services there, but you're limited to the number of people who can visually see you. When you're stuck in a classroom in a Head Start over on Cook Street in Wilson School, you're not visible to the public. So it's really hard to kind of draw people into that. So we have done a number of things that are not make a new building kinds of things over the years to try and reach the population we need to reach, but we've not been able to do that without more brick and mortar type efforts.
Right, so you need a larger facility or more space in general?
If we are gonna bring back dental, we have to have more space.
But without dental, you do need more space without considering dental? Or are you fine in your current space?
So I think the way that you're asking that, space and being able to reach the public are two different things.
Right, yes.
So, we can go back to the space studies that have been done several times in the county, and we all need new space. Everybody in the county, I won't just say it's the health department, we're all very tight. If you come into our bullpens, they're just that, they're very small spaces. And it's beginning to look, honestly, like a maze. They're not very, professionally done, I guess I'll say, but we could make it work in the space that we have, I'm gonna be honest about that. But is it about our space? Or is it about reaching the people that we're supposed to reach for our county? And that we're not doing.
Okay, so you could reach more people by having a different type of facility.
A facility at the population center, not in Tremont.
Okay, so that is a question. So where do you see that you should be located in order to do what your vision is?
Close to the population center. The map that you have for WIC, and then the chart on the back, I think it's next to last page, that has the bar graph and then also the numbers. It's the same information, but it's two different ways in case you're someone who likes bar graphs. But you need to look at where the poverty numbers are for the county and where the population numbers are. And so we've laid that out, and they're certainly not located in the central or eastern side of the county. We need to come closer to the western side of the county, which would be county seat Pekin, East Peoria.
Oh, so those would be more locations that you're interested in?
Absolutely. When you look at the number of clients that we have potentially to serve, it's Pekin.
Okay. And then my last question is, I was looking at your bus, I was looking at the map, and then this is just something that always kind of gets brought up, and I'd like to know your take on it. It's when we talk about busing people, right now there's no public transportation to Tremont. So if, say, we do bring it into Pekin, and it is more located with bus route available, do you think that that is a benefit? I mean, how many people do you feel like your clients are people that would take advantage of a bus route to get to Pekin or East Peoria or one of those areas for the health department? I guess trying to understand, because I feel like this is just something that gets brought up, and I don't know about bus routes, frankly. I don't. I know that the hub is in Peoria, and so sometimes if somebody, say from Washington, wanted to get to Pekin, they'd have to go from Washington to Peoria, then down to Pekin. I think that's how that works. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But I want to know, and I'm not even sure that you have this information, but of the people that we serve, are there a good portion of them that would take advantage of being on a bus route, or is that not actually as big a deal as what it might feel like in my mind? Sometimes it seems like maybe that would be a benefit.
So I don't have a number because we haven't had that ability to have people come on a bus to Tremont. So I can't tell you that number. But I can tell you with having the bus routes available all along the eastern side of the county, they can catch different buses to get downtown. So you open up an avenue for people to be able to reach you. Also, if you're dealing with those folks who live in poverty and rides are less secure, if you have a buddy who's gonna be able to drop you off 4 blocks away in the city center, it's a lot easier to convince than 8 miles to Tremont. So I think that there's just the ability to physically get here is different than it is in Tremont.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Nancy?
Well, just to kind of support that, I know, for example, I happen to just run across, I was at a particular business here in Pekin, and a car pulled in next to me and wanted to know, where's the health department? They were coming from, I suppose, from East Peoria, and they were sure it was in Pekin, and I said, I don't think it's in Pekin, you got to go out in the country. Oh, I mean, they didn't even know Tremont. So, I mean, that's a small thing, but I don't think that's the only person that's had that issue. So that's why I'm just adding that to that. Thank you.
Monica?
Amy, would you say that, is there a basement under that Tremont? Okay, I knew that, but I wanted to make sure everybody.
You're an attorney, you're asking a question you know
No,
the
I
answer to
know,
already.
but there's a lot of people that don't. I toured all those buildings a long time ago. Anyway, have you outgrown your space where you are as far as storage? Do you have any storage? Are you tripping over boxes and files and literally, I'm asking this question for a good reason.
Have you been there lately?
Believe it or not, yes, I have.
Our boardroom has a bunch of stuff stacked up in it from the dental center. So even our nicest space has storage, and we have 2 of the largest storage units at the Kmart that turn into the storage from the dental center that is you can't get in them. It's jam-packed from all of the stuff that came from the dental center.
So you're renting that too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, and we're renting space to store things, and you're still tripping over things out there. And how many is out there working? Do you know off the top of your head?
And in the 2 buildings in Tremont, it's 75-ish.
Okay. Not a lot of square footage for all those people and what you guys do, the services that you have.
We do have the storage shed, but we're by law have to keep a lot of records. And so we've not ever had, we don't bring our records downtown, so our records are stored out there at the health department, and immunization records, dental records, WIC files all have to be stored for a certain amount of time. We work every year with the state society that allows us to get rid of files, but more just come in from that year's clients. So even though we have that building that looks large, if you walked in it, you'd probably be aghast with how it looks. How about that?
And a lot of that is HIPAA related files, so obviously any files that, most of the files that you work with or the health department or say, there's certain things that are very confidential by law. So, okay, so you've got all these things, so if a tornado comes out there and hits that place, then everything just kind of flies in the air and might end up in Indiana like a check did in '03 from somebody's house in South Pekin. So, and we can laugh and that's, but it's the truth. And there's some big issues about those things too. So, and your facility, as far as that goes, wind blows, your windows kind of blow with it?
One of the last things Gordon told me was that there's cables actually that hold that building to a center. So it flexes.
Okay.
So it could be to start up with a generator, it could be something with transportation, it could be the wind that the building flexes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mike?
Couple comments. Number one, if you do move to Beacon, it could generate new clients. Your client number could grow, and that's a positive. And another comment is, we don't know how many dollars we could save in maintenance on all these buildings discussed that could be moved into taking care of the new buildings. So that's a dollar figure we can't or don't have, but it would be huge amount of dollars. And then the last one I'd like to bring up, I know Andy's not finished, but I wanna say now, I'll forget it. The animal control shelter is the same needs as all these other departments are. And that needs to be, if we review them, we should review all.
In animal control traditionally, because they're self-supporting, we work through that. Anything else you'd like to bring, or?
I guess the last thing, just so everybody's kind of clear, we've not had a sit down to like discuss space needs or who would go where or how we would configure things or, you know, all of those kinds of discussions. In discussing with the Board of Health, we talked about if clinical services were to move to a new or different, I'll call it different building, doesn't have to be new. Environmental health would move up from that old highway building, so the one that sits closer to the gas pumps, that we can easily say would be able to be doable. So that building would be freed up, but we're not talking probably in any circumstance of the Tremont building being totally unused. We would continue to have some clinical space out there, but we're talking, it's the need for us for the daily work, for dental, for people coming into WIC, for people who are seeking medical services like their shingle shot and those kind of things would be regularly in the population center, but we would be able to do some sites outside of us, which we do now. We go to different buildings and different organizations and provide immunizations. I'm looking at Jay, and I know we go to Excalibur and do flu shots and things like that. We would continue that, and we probably hold some special clinics at Tremont, but the day-to-day business is what we're talking about, the everyday in the door folks. We would like to be closer to the population center.
Thank you so much, Amy. I think, yeah, Greg, did you have something you want to bring up?
I just, not sure that I'm convinced that we should move the health department from Tremont. I know there's been a lot of points made, but it sounds to me like a shuffle. You know, we're gonna keep a little bit there, and we're gonna move environmental health there, and then we got another building out there that we don't know what we'll do with. All that is expensive, and the fact that the Tremont Health Department building needs work is not even a relevant point here, because we're not talking about getting rid of it, we're talking about continuing to use it. So I know to me it's like we're shuffling everything around, and we're not really doing a lot to benefit the citizens of Tazewell County. Now, I know the argument's been made that it would give better access, but what about the people in the outlying areas that would have to, right now it's a central point, and so the people in Washington and Delavan and all these other places, they can come together, and it's kind of centralized. So I just wanted to make that point.
Bill?
Well, to Greg and Mindy's point, it's a whole different ask from a new building, which is what the ARPA committee had a priority to do, and I'm sensing a hesitancy to that from you, Amy. Is that right? Because the ARPA committee recommended a new health department building as one of the priorities.
No, I don't want to give you this, that I'm being hesitant at all. I'm trying to be a good steward of dollars. So we can fit our clinical spaces in a much smaller space. It doesn't have to be brand new. It could be something that's reworked or remodeled. You know, my concern is that if we're trying to build all these brand new buildings, that money's not going to go very far. And especially in the environment we have right now with the cost of building out and supplies and those kind of things, I think I'm trying to be, I guess a good steward of our ask. That, you know, we don't have to have a brand new building. Yes, would we like to have a basement and all those kind of things? You know, yeah, because I don't want us to sell ourselves short in whatever we do for any of us. And then be in the same kind of landlocked or, you know, position that we kind of put ourselves in. So I guess I don't want you to hear that. We do need the space, and the purpose of this dollars is recovery of COVID. And the status of our community, and particularly around mental health and food insecurity and the understanding of nutrition and the rising costs of healthcare around obesity and heart disease and stroke is going up. And we're the department that deals with that. And so this is an ask for our community to make us better accessible to our population center and to address those issues. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
Well, it's good information for me, at least, to make my decision, because I thought that we were gonna be talking about a whole new health department building, moving out. But what you're really asking for is some of your services to be located in a different space in population centers. Okay, all right.
So, there's a theme here in the first two speakers that we're trying to establish the need, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of that. And Stu and Judge Gorman, if you want to talk about the courthouse and some of the deficiencies or what the courts need that you don't have currently,
Well, I guess I'll start. First of all, it's like it bothers me when we talk about old buildings that were built when we were here, right?
That's true.
That can't be right. And we've talked about, we don't wanna buy another old building, right? Okay, now there's one, I guess you call it an older building, that we didn't buy when it was old, we built it brand spanking new, and that was the Tazewell County Courthouse. And I hope that the appetite of this board will be that we won't abandon that building. We won't be tearing down that building.
No.
But, a few years ago, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the courthouse, and I spent my limited time and my remarks to basically, I'll sum it up by saying, this is a beautiful old building that has really adjusted and been very, have the agility to change with the times, but it needs a little love. And with a little love, it can serve for another 100 years. And David and I had a conversation yesterday, and he wouldn't take me up on my bet, because I said, no matter what new building you build, it will not outlast that courthouse.
Right. That's true.
Because this county board, when they planned that building, I don't know how they got it done, but they built, I mean, it is a fortress. But it's tough. Try to run wiring in it. It has some challenges, but we can expect that, right? There's a time where I think you decide to make a commitment, and I hope we continue to make that commitment to the Tazewell County Courthouse. Now, would we prefer, and would it be easier for the courts to operate in one location? Absolutely. I've had to, throughout my career here as state's attorney, had to operate an office that's in several locations within the downtown. And would it be easier to have everybody in one location? Absolutely. It would be better for communications. It's just much easier to administer an office that's all together in one building. But I'm also realistic, and I try to be realistic, and I know that we may have to compromise, and we may need to, as I stated, I think in the very beginning, I still kind of had a vision that we would have the civil in one building and criminal in the other. Now, did I say that because I thought that's the best possible world for the courts to operate in? No, it's not the best possible world, but it might be realistic, given what any of your appetites would be on going out and asking the taxpayers for more money, right? I mean, is that something you're all looking forward to? To go out and say, hey, let's have another bond referendum and borrow some more money, right? That was easy last time, wasn't it? When we built this structure that we're in here. I want to point over there. I'm always in the courthouse. But it's tough, and you're going to have compromises. We're not going to come up with the perfect solution, because I don't think the feds are going to send us that much money. But we're going to have limited ability to do things. Now, that being said, in the courthouse, we need to have ventilation. I've been asking for new windows in that building forever. I don't want to say how many years, because then you'll think I'm older than I am. But, and we've held off on putting windows in that building. It needs windows. It doesn't have any energy conservation at all when you talk about the windows. And I still believe that there's a way to, you're not gonna be able to put a ventilation system in like you could put in a brand new building, but I still believe that there is a way to improve the ventilation in that building dramatically. And why do we need to do that? Because we have employees working in a building that, I can remember, it was probably about 40 years ago that I have my first memory of walking into the Tazewell County Courthouse for an interview with the state's attorney, Bruce Black. And the only reason why that's memorable is because Bruce is kind of memorable when you meet with him. He can be pretty memorable. But the building itself was a selling point for me. And I believe it has been a great recruitment tool. Bill could speak to that, Kevin could speak to that, my colleague. I think that building, particularly the third floor courtroom, is something that sells it. I mean, that's a courtroom. That is a place that, as a young attorney, you think, you know what? I'm in a courtroom. This is a place that I want to practice law. So it helps recruit. That being said, and I know, because I have the chief judge here today, and I know that she'd like to be in a new building. We'd all like to have that. We'd like to be in a building where we have all the courts together, because that's the easiest way to administer the courts. But if we have to compromise, I don't want this to end with, we didn't do anything. We just kicked the can down the road a little further. I want to see us do something. So if we have to compromise, we'll compromise, and do that. And I know Link also would like to, we struggle. We're kind of torn between, that's the best solution. One new building, everybody in one building. And then we have a hard time leaving this beautiful building that we're in. Because it is something. I mean, it's something that any of you that have constituents would say, the Tazewell County Courthouse. I mean, it has an impression on people. It's a solid seat of government, and it continues to be. So, we've studied this, we've looked at this. I don't think I even participated in, I think, what might have been the 8th space study that was done by the county, that the first 7 didn't go anywhere, or it went the opposite direction. So I kind of got a little bit cynical about these space studies. Why are we doing them? We never followed them. The best space study we ever had done, and I don't remember the name of the acronym, but it was some volunteer retired professionals. Was it called like SCORE or something like that? But they did a study, and their recommendation was to get county into fewer buildings. And we didn't pay for that study, and we didn't follow that study. We bought more old buildings. That's what we did. We didn't get into fewer buildings, we got into more buildings. So, I think we all know what we need to do and what the best solutions would be, and we need to figure out what is doable. That was one of the first pieces of advice that I received from our presiding judge at that time when I became state's attorney. Remember to do what's doable. And don't worry about things you don't have control over. And I have no control over this. And I try not to worry about it. But at some point in time, I think we have to do something. Mike.
So, I agree, we don't tear the courthouse down. But then that leaves us in a position, if we build a new building and move everybody, we still have to maintain it.
Yes.
And what do we do with the old courthouse if we don't use it? So my thoughts are, we use it, repair it, we use it, and hit the realistic world, and separate the courts, like you said, and go, and that's the kind of position I'm taking.
Okay, all right. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to find a spot on this chart that we can do, that we can accomplish. And it's not just financial concerns. I know, I mean, this is government, and politics plays a role here. We have to, if we move all the courts out of the courthouse into a brand new building, we have to be able to present to the taxpayer a good, responsible use of the courthouse. And many of you are the same as me, where during my lifetime, this has basically been a courthouse. It's been the courts. It didn't start off that way. It started off as housing all of county government. And they built some really thick walls because they thought they could constrain the growth of government, but by golly, there were windows and doors, and it just got out of control over the years. But, so it can be repurposed, but that has to be part of it. And I wanted to make sure that I stress that I think that has to be part of it. What we're gonna do with the current courthouse, if we build a new courthouse. And maybe we end up with compromises in between, where it's criminal here and civil there, but let's do something. That would be my best advice to you, is to just do something. And maybe you need to do something big, and I kind of tried to make that point with the board, I think last December, when I spoke to you. Maybe you need to do something big. They did something big in 1915, I'll tell you that. I don't know how they did it, but they did it big and they did it right, and it's still with us, and it's a real resource and treasure for Tazewell County. So
what do you mean big?
What I mean big, yeah, you just go out, ask the taxpayers for more money, and build what you need. And I'm being completely sarcastic, because I know that's not happening. But what we need to do is come up with the best that we could do with what we have the ability to pay for, because I think that's what the taxpayer wants.
That eliminates big.
Well, we do the biggest thing that we can do with the resources we have. That's big. That's still big. So, we have a need. The courts have a need. Technology is a challenge. We did get the grant money from the state to improve technology in the courthouse. We're working on the electrical. Might someday we can get windows, I hope, in the courthouse. And we could hire somebody to tell us how well we could improve the ventilation system in that building for whoever is working in there. Because whether it's prosecutors, whether it's probation officers, whether it's judges, they're all people and they deserve to be working in an environment that's safe. Particularly, pandemics have brought this to the surface. I know, and anybody that's working in the courthouse knows that during cold season, flu season, everybody shares everything in that building because there's no ventilation. Forget about COVID. Just think about the health of the employees and work days that you miss when people don't feel well because they come and share their germs. Mike.
Now, I know you have a position and you haven't presented it on this issue. What, you beat around the bush, but what is your position? That we knowing what we got, what you would like?
Well, given reality and the limitation of funds, I think the best that I could hope that we could do for the courthouse and for the criminal justice system would be to finally build a building that takes advantage of the proximity of the jail to the courthouse, so that we don't do what we do now where we need to bring a prisoner over to Tazewell County Courthouse. We take them to Sallyport, put them in a van, drive them over to the McKenzie building, walk them through a tunnel and into the courthouse. Or we have kind of the courts come to this building and have the judges come over here and the prosecutor come over. We can do that too. Those are two things that we have done. We've also done remote when the court will allow it. And Judge Gorman can comment on that a little bit if she likes, because she sits on the commission regarding the rules that are going to be promulgated by the courts for remote. It's not going to be as easy. I know some people have suggested to me, well, you're going to be able to do everything by remote. That's not true. That is simply not true. We're not going to have trials where we have, you know, the judge is at her house, the jury's all at their houses, and everybody's doing this by Zoom. We're still going to have trials. We're still going to have hearings. There's going to be a lot that we still have to do in person, and Judge Gorman can comment on that. But when I'm looking at the land out there and I'm looking at what we have the ability of doing as a compromise, I think we need to at least build I'll call it criminal courthouse. And I'm like Amy, where's Amy? In the back. It's like you don't wanna give up, if you wanted the best, the biggest solution. She didn't wanna give up the basement, say that you didn't need a basement, if possibly she could get one. I don't wanna be suggesting that by just building a criminal courthouse, I'm saying that's the best possible solution. Because it wouldn't be, but it might be the best possible solution that this body is willing to do. And if that's true, then that's where we're at. And we at least accomplished something. We at least accomplished the benefit of having the jail downtown. Those of you that sat on the board when we built this building, some board members wanted to move it, build it in Tremont. Some of them wanted to move the courthouse out there. And I said, you know, that you can't do, unless you first have a referendum and you move the county seat, right?
Right.
I don't know if there's an appetite for that or not, and I'm not advocating it one way or the other, but we talk about population centers and all that. The county seat hasn't always been in Pekin. So why don't I just make this project even bigger, right? I don't think that's realistic to move it, but the courthouse has to be here, and we've built the jail here. We've made that commitment. It's here. So let's finally begin to kind of realize the reward of doing that, the benefit of doing that, and having it connected, so that we can benefit from that. So that's my answer. I hope that answers your question.
It does.
But I'm not taking the position that I want what I actually think is the best possible solution. I'm taking the position that I'm asking for you to do what I think is realistic.
Just a quick question. We talked about staff in the other buildings. What's the staff count about
in the courthouse?
Like, how many people do you have in there?
20.
You have 20, and there's 7 judges.
There's, well, at full staff there's 6.
6
Down
judges.
one judge at the moment.
Okay. And then the
She's
library.
mentioned that several times. They're down. Sorry.
So I would guess anywhere from 30 to 40, and maybe higher.
Yeah, maybe a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
Any other questions for Stu? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
So I'm gonna go one step further with your remarks. You keep kind of going like this when we talk about what you're interested in. I get this feeling that, would you like something that would be attached to this building?
Yes.
Is that what you're suggesting?
The criminal courts, yeah.
Okay.
At least, I mean, and obviously if you built an entire courthouse, then that would be attached.
Okay, well, that was the specific part.
And
that I didn't
I've been told it's absolutely unaffordable and wouldn't happen to connect this building to that building.
Okay.
You know, with a walkway or anything like that, right?
But you are suggesting that it could be attached to, you would like to see it attached to this building?
Right, and that points out that it's been a point of discussion in some meetings, and I think it's doable, but even that's not easy. Even connecting the buildings to have a location that works in the jail to connect to the courthouse, it's doable, but it wasn't as easy as what people thought it would be.
Okay, thank you, that was.
Naming me, I didn't think it'd be that hard, but apparently it is.
It does have some challenges. Russ?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions for Stu. And he didn't call me last night and lobby me. You can sit down if you want.
Oh, well, I want to hear that.
Okay. But I just want to make 2 points so the note to myself is, don't invite Stu on Saturday morning unless you got some time. And that's coming from me. Okay. What I want to share with you guys is that for 8.5 years, I was Jim Edgar's assistant for courts and law enforcement. And in that job, I was in county after county after county, from Tazewell County, was the southern to the Wisconsin border, all the way across from Galena to Lake. And so I had an opportunity to watch what counties did in terms of their building, and ask questions of judges and whoever else I was working with, sheriffs and state's attorneys and circuit clerks, of what they did and what they liked and what they didn't like, and it's sort of, I was sort of like an automatic benchmarker for Tazewell County. And whether it's Winnebago, Boone, Cane Lake, Rock Island, I started making a list, but I don't want to write them all down. There was 36 counties. They followed the recipe that Stu just suggested. When they got to the point where they needed to expand, none of them deserted their historic, beautiful courthouse. What they did was they find, and he said it also, in close proximity, some land, and then they would build a building that was sort of ancillary. So they wouldn't take the judges out, or they wouldn't take the people that needed to be in that courtroom every day, but they would take the people who had a tangential relationship, but not a daily commitment relationship. And so the proposal that Stu gave is exactly what most of the counties in Illinois have done. They're of Sizewell. If you're in Putnam and Stark, you just stay in your little courthouse and keep paying for maintenance. The other thing I wanted to say is, sort of back to the main issue that we're here today with ARPA funds, is when I was chief fiscal officer of this county, it's important to protect all the funds. But the one fund that's the most important to protect is the county general fund. The county general fund is the fund that funds the judges, funds the state's attorney, funds the clerk of the circuit court, funds the coroner and the sheriff and everybody else. It's important to get that fund protected. So long ago, at the first meeting that the finance chairman held on ARPA, I don't know, it seems like over a half a year ago, I heard people, including Bill, talk about the commitment to the criminal justice system. I want to reinforce that commitment. That is critically important. And all the criminal justice system is funded out of the county general fund, not special revenue funds. Thank you. Those are the 2 points I wanted to make.
All right, any other questions for Stu? Thank you, Stu. Kate, is there any, Judge Gorman, anything you want to add? Okay, please.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I'm an optimist, so I've got a few comments I'd like to make.
Okay.
First of all, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a lifelong Tazewellian. I have been a judge for 14 and a half years. I have served in Peoria. I was presiding judge in Tazewell in 2020 during that wonderful COVID time. My dad was the Tazewell resident county judge from 1980 to 2000, so I have a great deal of affection for that building. Somewhere there is a video of 17-year-old me in courtroom 101 with my dad as the judge. We were doing a skit. So I mean, I understand the affection that everyone has for that building. I'm also going to say I'm a lifelong Washingtonian, and I want to get to the 11 o'clock game. Go Panthers, sorry, Potters. And so I'm going to try and make this very brief. But having the benefit of being in different places, and I have been assigned, for example, I have an assignment in a LaSalle County case where they have a civil courthouse. The old courthouse is downtown, and the new courthouse is attached to the jail. And that is not the best arrangement. This courthouse is a beautiful building, as evidenced by all of these comments. The time has passed by for its current use. It was built when horse and buggy were the main mode of transportation. So this is a changing world, and we need to change with it. And my suggestion is that we build a building that houses courthouse operations. We can repurpose the old courthouse with county offices That's what Champaign County did, they managed to get it done. And that courthouse has served Tazewell for generations, and you have the opportunity to build something that's gonna be, useful to the Tazewell County citizens and your constituents for generations to come. But that building, sadly, is not going to continue to be able to serve its purpose. Someone's gonna tell you you're gonna have to build it, we're not gonna have the money. So now is the time to consider what's gonna be best, and I understand there's competing interests, and I understand that there may be compromise, but I do agree with Stu, doing nothing is, we're gonna lose out on this money that we'll have to then use from the general revenue fund. So, I would be happy to answer any questions, and I will also say that the judiciary is completely behind this project. I'm happy to address any questions that anybody may have. Yes?
I'm kind of confused.
Sure.
You're saying there's a compromise because of the money, and you're saying build a whole new courthouse.
Well,
Move county offices in that courthouse, so there's two different opinions. That's what I'm hearing.
well,
No, I think we're in agreement, that's the best solution, what Judge Gorman is talking about is the best solution.
and I don't have this
I'm
much
trying to be a little-
experience with county government, but I'm an optimist. So, if we could build courtrooms and, kind of compromise on the space and then repurpose the current courthouse with the county offices, so if you don't build as much, then there's money to repurpose. Right, so probation and, some other county offices could be over there.
Well, we're gonna have to borrow from there,
Well, but there's still, $23 million that we wouldn't have to borrow? Did you have a question?
Any other questions for Judge Gorman?
Yes?
Not necessarily for Judge here, but I did have a couple thoughts. So the sugar and block building's been purchased already. So it seems like something is going to happen. You are going to move forward, or you just purchased another old building. Which is the intent, right? So how much is the intended new Justice Center going to cost? Do you have any estimate on that?
I think our initial pass-through was at least $25 million.
And then the next thought is the courthouse is right on the bus line. So could the offices that the health department needs, could that be fit into the old courthouse as some sort of repurposing? Because it is in Beacon and it is right on the bus line, just a thought. And then, just a comment, before you demo the buildings like the Tazewell building or the old post office, it would be nice as a citizen to see that being offered up to the public for sale before you demoed it and, without really a nice intent or purpose, that it would be nice to see some sort of time frame that it was offered for sale before demolition.
Okay.
Any other questions concerning the courts?
Thank you, Judge Gorman.
Thank you.
Go Morton. See if you pick up on it.
She started it.
So, today, and we met together, these committees, found our priorities. We kind of gave Greg the charge. He was able to purchase the old building there. And I think a lot of times Greg is kind of felt, maybe he hasn't felt that way, but he's the target of some bombs that get lobbed. Because, we're just trying to figure out. And so I want to offer some guidance to Greg. He's done an awesome job thus far. And Greg, I know he's been working with Farnsworth. Farnsworth gave an initial design. We have Caius Jennison from Farnsworth here.
Washington doesn't have
Midwest Engineering is our next company. But anyway, I don't know that that initial pass-through kind of met what our expectations were. And so, there's just some communication issues here that, we're trying to clear up. Greg, is there things that you wanna offer, cause I have a compromise that I wanna throw out there. I'm just assuming that, is there an appetite to borrow money?
If we need it.
Okay,
If we need to use, we have a goal for the Justice Center. And we decide what we wanna do, and it's costs more money, we'll have to borrow.
okay.
Or give up the ARPA money.
Greg, any comments you wanna make?
This has been a very big learning experience for me. First of all, having all the board members and all the department heads is, I won't say impossible to get together, but it's great to see it all working. The square footage amount from Farnsworth is $350 a square foot, and that's today's times. The initial proposal was around 60,000 square feet. That would put all probation and all the departments that we're getting out of the other buildings into one building, and that is the Cadillac. I mean, that is as nice as it's gonna be, and if you, it's gonna be 22 million to 25 million to do that, not counting the health department, okay? So, my official, or original opinion was, wow, we can get a brand new building in 2022, built in 2024 to 26, and we can have 60,000 square feet of new building, okay? And I really don't care what goes in it at this point in time. I'm just saying, where do you get this opportunity, right, of money that was given to us? We don't want it to go back. We're not saying we're not gonna repurpose the courthouse. There's departments that can go in that courthouse. We'll have to have it all planned out and organized if we can get everybody to get along. And if we're in debt for $5 million or $7 million or $2 million, by the time it's all done, we have a health department and a new 60,000 square foot center, maybe all together in one for a little bit of debt. I don't even know how the bonding situation works, or if we just borrow the money ourselves, but I don't think we could go wrong. And as far as working together, I mean, we've kind of worked with Farnsworth, and we're doing a great work with them. Everybody's getting their voice heard. We just need to direct them better, and that's what this meeting is about, to get better direction. So that's what we're shooting for from the property committee, is just to give better direction to go forward. And
Brett, I'm sorry, Greg.
That's it.
Mike and then Brett.
The 60,000 includes all the courts, probation, public defender.
We feel like we can put all, is that correct? We feel like we can put all the departments that we're moving out of the other buildings into one building, and it will be 60,000-ish square feet.
Thank you.
Caius, you wanna make a comment?
Caius Johnson, motion to approve. Yeah, the 60,000 includes everything that probation, the courtrooms, and actually includes an extra courtroom for future growth. So there is some room to tighten that number up.
The circuit clerk would move to?
Yes, that's good. But if probation were to stay in the existing building, or we only build the courtrooms that you're using right now, we could pull that number down a little bit.
Any questions for Caius or Greg?
I would just like to say that, we're not begging our employees or departments to move either. I mean, if the public defender doesn't wanna be there or there, but I will have to say that the board's gonna have to make this decision. I mean, we cannot leave it up to our department heads. They can have their input, but when we talk about actually getting this done, it should be a workable solution. Maybe all the circuit clerk office might not be in the new building. You may only want some in the old building and the other building. And we're willing to work with everything, but every department, but like some people don't wanna be in the new building too. So that will save us space, and we'll probably relocate them into the courthouse. So, I mean, it's all work in progress, but all I'm saying is this board will have to make the final decisions on what's going on.
Brett and then Monica.
Alright, So, as I've been listening to things, I wanna bring up just a couple of things. So Greg's the current property chair, Mike was the previous property chair, and I was the property chair before that. So you've got three property chairs who have been dealing with ongoing issues throughout this for the last 10 to 15 years here. As you're talking about new buildings and looking at different things, we've got Mike Shoney, we've had Mike Strong, we've had Dutch before him, we've had all these people. New gets old really quick. I don't know if anybody knows, I was a heating and contractor, heating and cooling contractor for 20 years. I've got a remodeling and a home building contract business right now. All I do is remodel stuff and tear things apart. They get old real quick because people don't maintain it and take care of it. And whether it's the buildings that you're about to look at and build or do the different things, you have to look at what it's gonna cost to keep these things up, whether it's personnel, the actual projects that do go on inside of it. You have to be prepared to spend the money to keep this thing going, whatever it is. This capital plan, me and Mike Strongman came up with it, and it was $5 million to bring things back out of a hole. We've got holes, everything from wages, been trying to how to bring things back up and then maintain. We haven't maintained that. We haven't maintained buildings. We haven't done these things. So no matter what you go around spending, this building itself, it wasn't done right. The heating and air conditioning systems were a disaster. They were not engineered correctly. They were not designed correctly. They were not installed correctly. We have leaks. We've had different problems throughout all of it. And then it wasn't maintained on top of that. So no matter what you guys look at doing, have a plan for keeping it up to date or going forward, because otherwise you're just gonna have this kind of a problem further down the road.
Thanks, Brett. Monica?
I know I keep going back to the health department. Have you had studies, Mr. Longfellow, on for the health department as far as their needs and their, spaces needs and for all their facilities together? Has anybody did a study on that, as you have already with the courthouse?
We have not, because we were basically talking about that 12,000 square foot for a clinic and dental clinic on Broadway. So that's our goal, is 10 to 12,000 square feet for that facility, and leaving the environmental in the old facility. And that's what we're being asked by, from Amy. That's what she's wanting. So as far as doing a study, we kind of know what we want, and that's a clinic in town with a bus route and a big enough to have her 30-some people and her dental lab all in one building. That's what we're shooting for on that, and that's going to be about 10,000 square feet or so. Also, I forgot to maintain, or that hasn't been talked about yet today, is if we keep the courthouse with courts in an adjusted what we can and can't afford type mentality. Just on the subject, we'll have to maintain 2 sets of sheriffs in both buildings for maintenance and security, and we also have to do a bailiff thing, and then we might have to shuffle jury people from building to building. And there's a big conversation about having the jury in the McKenzie building and having the jury in the new building, which right now the plan is to have the jury in the new building. But that's more expense, and that's an annual expense. 3 more sheriffs sitting in two buildings, and bailiffs moving back and forth. So it's just, there's the Cadillac, like I said, there's a Cadillac, and then we can compromise.
John, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple. One just got added, I guess. Just so you're aware, there is a conversation from the feds about you will be required to have security at the McKenzie building. So when you talk about maybe having 2, you're actually looking at maybe having 3. They want armed security in the buildings so that, because of the danger of election facilities being heightened right now. So you may shortly have it where if you keep having multiple buildings, you're gonna have guards in every single building. I was just going to mention, we talked about a conversion of office space for the courthouse. Do remember you only have 1 restroom in that building right now, so lots of your staff don't use that facility, they use the McKenzie building. So if you put more office people in that facility, you will have more people using the limited restroom facilities in the McKenzie building. So something to think about as you keep increasing numbers of employees.
There's more than one restroom in the courthouse. There's one on the first floor and one on the third.
Oh, one on the first one?
Yeah.
We still have quite a bit of traffic coming over
Well,
continuously.
yours are nicer.
That's why I walk across.
It was brought up about windows. I wish sound and vibration were the only things we had to deal with windows, because I have more windows that are broken than are fixed, and we really right now worry about when will the glass come crashing in, because we already got one pane that's all the way broken through. And then when it gets down to the bus, I guess my question is, when you look at that map, it was a wonderful map that the health department provided of where their clients come from. But I overlaid it with the bus map, which any of you can pull up and take a look at where the bus routes are. And if you take a look at where the bus routes go, the second and third highest user of the health department would be taking the bus downtown. And then they'd have to decide, do they go 5 minutes to the Peoria Health Department on that bus route? Or do they get the bus route that goes a half an hour to the Pekin Health Department? And since there's already people from Peoria on this chart coming to use ours, why would I go a half an hour to Pekin rather than 5 minutes to Peoria? Because if they're getting services from Peoria here, we gotta be able to get the same services from the Peoria Health Department. I'm just bringing up, it'd be nice to have a number of just how many people from where are being gained by a bus, because it just keeps getting discussed, but the bus route really just services Creve Coeur and Pekin. There isn't bus service anywhere else that would be quicker. East Peoria goes downtown first. They don't go there. So the point would be it's 5 minutes versus a half an hour. They'd have to look at which bus do they want to take.
Alright, so if we build a building that right now is only $5 million over our budget, and we assume that it doesn't become $8 million once additional contingencies and unforeseen events happen, or even perhaps more than that, and we ignore any need to do anything with regards to the health department, so that we're only looking at that $5 million lack. Are we gonna be able to get it done in time?
So those are two issues that I wrote down that we need to consider. We have the timeline consideration, and I hate to say the big R word, but I mean, they were talking about a possible recession. So do we want to be seen as spending, even though we have the money like that? I mean, there's a perception issue there, even though the money's in the bank during a recession. So you bring up a good point, Bill.
Good. Tammy's done some research on the building part of the time.
Yeah, I've checked on it in the construction world, and 24 months, 22 to, and actually it's kind of funny because it's very close to your dollar value, but 24 months is doable to build the 60,000 square feet.
Okay, great.
So I just was doing some research on property and spoken to some reputable general contractors in the area.
Thank you. Bill, Commissioner?
I just wanted to say I'm in favor of building what we have the money for. I'm not in favor of trying to raise money through a referendum, through bonding, through anything other than the ARPA funds we have. And if we have sufficient fund balance that we could spend down some fund balance, I would be in favor of that as well. And I figure we can probably get $2 or $3 million out of fund balance without it being a severe hardship. But I really don't think that I think if I'm hearing the numbers correctly, we're maybe 4 million, but 4 or 5 million, something like that, outside of the ARPA money trying to do this project and the things we've already spent money on. So if we put in another few million, we're still short. So I don't know whether the rest of this board wants to try to borrow money, or whether other people would disagree with me and think we actually have more that we can spend down from our available reserves. But it seems to me like we really need to figure out the cost a little bit more clearly, decide very definitely who's going to be in the building and what the actual square footage is gonna be. I mean, we just don't have sufficient detail right now that I'm comfortable. I would love to be able to say, let's put all of the courts into this new building. And if we can afford it, great. Right now, it doesn't seem like we can.
Bill? What's the time frame for debate and vote on this?
Well, today's just discussion, there's no vote here. Obviously, the sooner we can come to a consensus, the better, because we do have a timeline there.
Was there a guesstimate on when this will be voted on?
I would like to, go ahead, Greg.
The property committee feels like we need to be demolishing buildings at the end of this year to be able to have architectural drawings at the end of this year to start going forward next
We
year.
have already approved the demolition, right? Have we voted on that?
I don't know that we've officially voted on it yet, but we purchased the buildings, but the timeline be, sign the agreements early spring next year. That would be beautiful if we could agree on what we're gonna do. And then that would give us within a 22-month to 24-month time period to have it built. So we're within that limits, but this decision here obviously is not gonna get done in one meeting.
So can I ask, is it gonna be debated at the June meeting?
I don't know that, cause this will go back to property committee with what came from here today. So I don't know that things will happen. Before you leave, Bill, and I'll take other questions, I wanna propose a compromise. I'm just thinking about this real quick. So essentially what we have is 23 million, and then our fund balances right now, Mike, we have maybe 4 or 5. And so we're at 50% of our general fund right now in our reserves. We wanna keep about 33% in there, so is that correct?
Yes, right now, my understanding is the policy is going to keep 50% of fund balance in the general fund with a budget of approximately 32 million. That means at least 16 million would need to be stay in there. The estimate as of the end of last year was that 26 million would be in there. 4 million included the capital projects funds money. Now we're waiting for the official audit balance to see what that is once the audit is complete. So that does, if you take out the capital work, leave potentially up to 6 million that could be put to the project and still stay at that 50% mark.
So here's my, I'm just gonna throw this out. Hopefully I won't muck everything out this late in the game. But what if we were to take $5 million and did an extensive remodel of the courthouse? And really, maybe it's a little bit more, I don't know. Take $5 million and find a place for the health department, somewhere in East Peoria, Creve Coeur, Pekin. That would take maybe $10 million to build an administration building where we could put the state's attorney's office, the public defender, and probation, because that's quite a few employees. And then if we built out additional floors or something, that would give us some time in the future. That would leave $3 million for a cushion and or broadband, and that's not touching the $6 million in reserves. So that's with $29 million potentially to spend. Extensive remodel of the courthouse, an administration building, and we could even put a temporary court or some courtroom in that building. $5 million for a health department, $3 million for a cushion and broadband, and then we still have that in the reserves. Just throwing that out there. Russ, you had your hand up?
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate tremendously the fact that you have sort of dived down specifically. I'm confessing I'm more a visual learner than an audio learner, and so I'd appreciate it if you could put that in a Word document and flesh it out however you want, and send it to us, and let us sort of look at it, see what we like, what we don't like, and then maybe just return it back to you. that would be my strong preference, if you'd be willing to do that. While I've got the microphone, I do want to say that I am against borrowing money, 100%. And I also couldn't agree with you more, Dave, about the word perception. And especially today, there's nobody in the world that doesn't know this already. There is a whole lot of people who are just basically holding on to their shorts. And the last thing they want to see is their government, which they already have written off their federal and state government in this state, but their local government, for God's sakes, is supposed to be closest to the people doing the same kind of thing. And I think it would send a very, very bad, a terrible message. So I thank you for saying that, but is it possible, Dave, that you could send that to us in writing?
I mean, I do. Just in my conversations, and I don't, again, want to mess things up. Bill, you have a comment you want to make?
Well, I was just gonna say, I asked when the time frame was, I didn't know it was right now, it sounds like you're
No,
proposing.
I'm just throwing that out for consensus. It'll go to property, it'd be 3 smaller projects rather than.
So you're saying to vote on it as a direction for property to consider?
Just a consensus, or, just something for property.
Because I hope I'm not voting for where these funds are going, and I'm not.
No.
Okay. So
And
your
you know what?
direction for property committee to consider?
Yeah, and I'm just throwing that out. We may just want to stay with the Justice Center, that's fine. Jay?
I like what Russ said. I'm visual too. I want to see a schematic. Where are these places going to go? What are these small projects? Show it in a schematic of some sort, email to everybody. So then we can give you some feedback. You can take it to property and say, all right, this is the majority consensus.
Indy?
I think it might be helpful if we would consider a couple options. So, Dave, I think, what you put forward, that's a great idea, and we should think about that. I also would love to see, as there are people that are interested in a courthouse. I feel like right now we just have this big version of a courthouse. I think it would be really great for us to see a more scaled back version of a courthouse and see what that's actually gonna cost. And then, just kind of as HR chairman, just as we're throwing out that we have like $6 million extra in our fund balance, I just wanna also, let's not forget that we are gonna be looking at doing something for our employees too, so I wanna, let's not give that all away.
But that's money set aside for capital projects, yeah.
So in the interest of time, can I propose that we make a motion in the framework of your statement, the schematics of Russ's statement go to property committee and then present it at the June 29th.
So it's not on the agenda, so we can't have a motion, but
Okay.
just a consensus.
I would vote for that consensus.
And Greg, are you okay with something like that? Just look at that as an alternative. Okay.
It'll take another 6 more months.
It comes from 5 different ways. Yes?
Hi, I'm Terry Gedbay. I'm here just because I'm interested, a resident of the county. But it seems to me that we really need to lock in on the cost of protecting the integrity of the Tazewell County Courthouse before you really know how much more money. Consensus, that's what it sounds like, and that's what you care about. Number 2, I really think you would hear it from the communities that if you were considering demolishing of the building before putting that forth to them with what your costs are, looking at fixing the courthouse, what your plans are for building new. I think that almost has to come second in the plan. You have that, it's not gonna settle. And then you'll know, after you do those 2 things, you're gonna know about how much money you have left. I would certainly consider offering those buildings for sale to the community before considering demolishing them. So then you're gonna know how much money you have really left, how much bonding power you might have available, how much community, this is what needs to be repaired, and I think they'll all be aboard with that. But number one, fixing the courthouse costs. Number two, selling the buildings versus demolishing them, and then you're gonna know what we have left for.
Okay. Yeah, Angela?
I think we also need to consider operational costs. So we need to see the current projected operational cost of the old facility versus operational cost of the new facility, especially with increase in electrical and gas services, and it's only gonna get worse. So we can fix an older building, but how much is that gonna cost us in the future to run and maintain, as opposed to new building with a new HVAC system, new windows, new roofing, new structure. It hasn't really been addressed yet with these older buildings.
Okay. Nancy?
Well, I support what you're saying, David. I think it's time we start committing to something. We could be throwing numbers around here for months. We've been accused of this in the past, of talking about things for so long that we end up losing property, costs go up, and so on and so on. So I would certainly support what you're saying. I have no problem with the other ideas added to your suggestion, but I think then the property committee has something a little more concrete to start building on, because right now, it's a lot of balloons up there. Let's pull some of them down and start making some progress, or we'll be at this forever. Well, we won't get anything done.
Right. And I would encourage people, as you have ideas or questions, please funnel them through me or Greg, rather than just speculating and, because I think that's how some of those rumors get started. Caius?
So, going back to your list, you had $10 million earmarked for a new building. And you're remodeling the existing Tazewell County courthouse. And I see 4 options as well as doing that. One is a full new courthouse, the Cadillac. One is a scaled back courthouse, still connected to the jail. One is a split courthouse, using the existing building and the new building, maybe putting criminal in the new building, connected to the jail. But it sounded like you were suggesting leaving the courts in the existing building and putting a new building with administrative functions in it to free up space in the courthouse, but continuing to use the remodeled Tazewell, the original building, for all of the courts. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I literally, it was just last night that I thought of this, so if I'm surprising anyone, it's because I had a big dinner and I had an indigestion. So, yeah, go ahead, Stu.
What did you have to eat?
Mushrooms. And I would hope that as a compromise, we could at least capture the benefit of having the courts attached to the Justice Center. Because otherwise, we're not really gaining anything. In fact, this would be a real step backwards if then our office wasn't even in the same building as the courts are in.
Right, and as I was thinking, of the people in the old post office would move over to this new building. I mean, the state's attorney would still be in the courthouse. But again, what I'm saying, Kate?
Well, I just want everybody to understand the safety concerns of moving prisoners in the way that we do to the old courthouse. So if we have a jury, the defendant is brought over from the jail, there's a guard, you have the jury to contend with, the person's in shackles, there's no holding cell. The person is basically out in the lobby with the general public. If there's a group of them, I mean, I don't know if we still do the chain gang. 12 people chained together coming through the general public area of the courthouse, and that's where, I mean, capturing the jail and having a seamless transition from the jail to the courthouse, having a holding cell where the defendant can visit with their attorney and change into regular clothes. Right now, with the jury in the McKinsey building, the jail across the street, it is a difficult, not impossible task, but
it makes a lot of sense to get jury, the courts, and the jail all connected for not only ease and being sure that everybody's needs are met as it relates to justice, but safety. I mean, having somebody could easily escape. I personally had someone try to escape. He was caught. He ran right into that side door, and that stopped him in his tracks. But it is a concern, particularly in these tumultuous times. You know, if somebody gets a gun in there and starts shooting, bullets and marble don't go together very well. So
The ricochet gets you.
yeah, it's something to consider, coupled with the fact that that old building with respect to technology is not very conducive to upgrades that aren't really expensive.
Right, and I appreciate it. Go ahead, Mike.
And I'm gonna kind of feed off what Coach said, you know, right now, I'm a maintenance guy, but I spent 25 years in criminal justice system. Transporting inmates or, I don't know what to call inmates, is always dangerous. Given the fact that they do come through that side, through the tunnel, up through the tunnel. We have staff walking through there. On most cases, one guy decides he's gonna go off, and I've seen it happen. So I think it's important to change how we transport these guys. I didn't know for the longest time that we actually had, our clientele going down in the elevator where our snack machines are at, and had full access to that. And what goes through there is our clientele into there.
Right.
So, some of these people know when they're coming through, okay? When I found that out, I actually moved the soda machine, snack machine out of that area so I could avoid seeing the general public going down in the basement. So, some of these changes are necessary for security and safety reasons of staff and of.
I'm gonna add one more thing with respect to safety. So, you know, after I sentence someone, I toddle right out to use the bathroom that the general public does, and a family member came up and started accosting me about what I had done during the sentencing hearing. And, that, in these times, I'm pretty scrappy, but, you know, that's just not something that you wanna encounter. Our jobs are hard enough, and, it is definitely, a building that did not consider 106 years ago the realities of security that are now, in my opinion, necessary.
Right. And I didn't mean to lob a bomb here at the last minute. I just know that there are some real difficulties connecting these two buildings if we have a new building. Because we can't go underneath because of utilities in the ground. I don't know that there's a spot that Jeff has identified in going second floor. So there's some real issues there that we need to work out, and that's what we're trying to work on. So now I know I've kept you about 30 minutes longer than I said I would. But Greg, do you feel like you have more information to go on? Next steps? Your committee?
Sure, we have information to go on. I just, you know, like I said earlier, it's gonna, you know, 21 different opinions.
Right. Right.
It's impossible, so
Russ.
we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah.
It's just, all I wanna do is verify that I'm gonna get something from you, and then very quickly, within 2 days, I will reply only to you and Greg. So I won't copy all, but, will I get something from you? Did you promise to do that? I didn't hear you say you would do that.
Yes, you'll get something
Thank
from
you,
you, Russ.
sir. Appreciate it.
Are there any other comments before we end up here today? Mike?
I just want to give you some technical information. If you were to do any kind of referendum, it needs to be approved 79 days before the election day. So just so you're aware, for the general election, that would be August 21st this summer, and for the consolidated next year, it would be January 13th. So just for informational purposes, that's what a timeline would look like.
Got a text from Wayne Allpeter. He must be watching on Facebook, but just with the health department and mental health issues becoming greater and greater, that needs to be a part of our investment. So, Jake, did you have a comment?
No, I would like to see that schematic that you just talked about, you know, the capital as well, and who else can be in there. Yeah.
other comments or questions? Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
Just sitting here listening today, you know, I'm a man of few words. As far as the health department, I think that should be in its own domain somewhere, wherever. And the bus service that we're hearing a lot about, what is their schedule? I haven't heard anything on their scheduling. What are they gonna do at the end of the day when bus service makes its last run and there's still people being looked at in the health department? And as far as Brett, he was spot on maintenance. And that was another thing on the health department about a crack in the wall. That's, I think the quote was, been there as long as I can remember. Why hasn't anything been done to correct it? And that's kind of like, it's not gonna get better, things only get worse. And I'd like to see, at least see that crack taken care of or looked at, or I don't know if Mike's been aware of it, or.
No.
I mean, these things, if employees need to bring it up, hey, I seen this, so people are aware of it, instead of letting everything go. I get aggravated on that.
But, I mean, honestly, I mean, we're not letting things go. It's a balance between how much money we have and what the needs are. And so that's where our responsibility is as a board here, to figure out how to spend that money.
Some things are easy to take care of.
Yeah.
As soon as it happens, as soon as it's, you know, I'm trying to be on a positive note, so I'm gonna leave it at that.
Thanks, Kim. Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just wanted to make it clear, for those of you who haven't already heard me talk ad nauseum about this at ARPA, my position, although I like the idea of putting all the courts into a new building, I think we're gonna have trouble affording that. And I don't think I made it clear, what I'm supporting is the idea that we have a new building for the criminal courts and for any of the individuals that need to have their offices in that building. And I think that is affordable, and it can be done on time, and we can still take care of the health department. I think that what Mr. Zimmerman is proposing, although this is the first time I've heard it, just at first blush, it doesn't sound sufficient. Sorry, Dave, not this person.
No offense taken.
I'm certainly not in favor of that. I'm still pushing for the same thing that we discussed at ARPA and that we, I believe, unanimously voted in favor of on the ARPA committee.
And we have a better idea of what money we have now, so if we use it all on a courthouse, there's nothing left for anything else. Greg?
I'd just like to state, as far as property committee, you know, every year we have money budgeted for all the maintenance of all the buildings, and Mike does a good job as far as picking the projects like the concrete in front of the courthouse, the windows in the McKenzie building, all the different things. I mean, it's $1.8 million that we just continuously spend on our buildings. So it isn't like we don't fix our buildings. We just, you know, we haven't spent $5 million, but even the electrical part is gonna be several $100,000 in the courthouse. So the money's being spent behind the scenes on all the properties, and it's all budgeted, and there's a task list, and it's getting done. Sometimes not timely, because all the bids and bid lettings and all that, but all that's getting done. So I just wanna, you know, kind of defend the property committee on that.
Mike, did you have a comment? Okay, any other comments? Okay, two things. Please take a sweet roll home with you. My wife will kill me if I bring him home, and go mow your lawn. So, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.